Hello everybody, Jake here with a Minecraft invention. This time in Feed the Beast. That's right, we are going to be doing a Feed the Beast machine. Now, this machine comes as a solution to a problem I was having in my single player world, and that problem is diamonds are so hard to find, it's ridiculous. So what I decided to do was research how to create diamonds, and boy, are there a lot of different ways you can do it. So let's just go to diamonds and left click to find, oopsie, not in recipe mode. Look at that. Okay. So now let's just take a look at how we can make diamonds. So that doesn't help. That doesn't help. That would help, although it's less than a 1% chance of that happening. Oh. Well, this looks more reasonable. Coal chunk. Okay, compressed coal balls and obsidian. Coal balls, compressed, obviously. Coal dust. Well, that's just, some coal. So this spawned the idea of, let's make a giant machine that can make diamonds out of coal, gravel, so flint, and clay. Well, if you look at the recipe for this, you'll see that you have to have an obsidian block. That is not true. In fact, if you go check the Industrial Craft Wiki, you can see that you only need a piece of brick. So really, it's 64 coal, 8 gravel, and 4 clay per diamond. And I think that's a pretty good deal, as long as you can find enough coal. Now, the first thing I wanted to do was to just make something that would literally go through the steps and process it and make something. This sucked. This did not work whatsoever. And I'm just going to go through it. This is, a macerator, and then it would compress it, compress those coal balls after making them, and then that would craft something else, and you would go through all the steps, and this is where the clay came from. So you'd have a furnace with some clay inside of it, and that'd pump it in, and you'd have this giant machine. And that didn't work because you had to pump stuff in the top, so I would have to have curled everything. So I didn't realize that until I got over here, and this is a whole lot better of a machine. This was my actual working attempt, so you can see I just have a bunch of energy generators and whatever else, but you'd put the coal into this, it'd macerate it, it'd come through, sent into here, this makes the coal balls and pumps them back into the chest. You manually put them into this compressor puts it there, and then it makes something else, and then it automatically pumps it out and you get diamonds. So that worked, except for the fact that you'd have to touch things, and I don't want to touch anything. So that came to this design. So as you can see, it's an interface. So there's no way of screwing up or having to manually really do anything, but what you have to do is you take the coal, take the gravel, and you put the clay, and you stick them in these chests, and then you flip these switches on to pump them back into the machine, and then you turn on this for power that turns on everything else. Now, this worked, but it's so inefficient that I did not want to continue using it. So I have, I made the same mistake. This originally went in here. Nope, you gotta pump it to the top. And I'm using this fiber cable, which is expensive, and you need diamonds to make it, so that doesn't work, because I want to make diamonds, not use diamonds. And so the process really is just, you're cooking it, the clay, putting in this chest, this thing makes the bricks, puts it into a final chest, and then this thing compresses and goes through into this compressor, and you have a process. But it worked, but it was not, look at this, I used cobblestone piping with the golden one, and that doesn't work because you lose a lot of speed, and you should be using the stone. And then I used more stone that I had cobble over here, even though it wouldn't matter, and it's cheaper. So I'm saying, okay, let's do a better model, and this was my version 1. So it's the same thing, only I use crystal chests just for looks, and so I could see the items, because in this model I have these, these things which pump out of these chests into the things, which then furnace, cooks it, macerator, rotary macerator, and you'd go through each of these processes and you'd eventually end up with a diamond, of course. And in order to keep it compact, I had to stick the auto crafting benches on top of the chest, which makes them inaccessible. So that means I just have to troubleshoot by looking into the chest, which is why I use the crystal chest. Now, this is probably the easiest design to make. However, this was made on a bunch of assumptions that I probably didn't need to make. For example, the assumptions that redstone engines would overheat. No. In fact, if you have hooked them to anything, they'll never overheat. Only when you forget to have them hooked up to something do they explode. So, I made a whole video, about a 20-minute video on this design, until I watched B00's design for his stuff with the hopper, and I'm like, well, that makes things a lot easier. So then I came up with this thing, which is much more compact and crazy, and it's much easier because you take it and you stick the stuff into one chest only. Let me just get rid of hay. Oh, achievement get, yeah. Let's just put these diamonds away. Okay, and this is the same process, the same thing, except it works a whole lot better. And why would you ask that? Well, first of all, you need a diamond thing, so that makes things simpler. You don't have to have 3 pipes instead of just 1 diamond pipe. And you start it off, you use the same electric engine, it pumps it up to the top, and it goes through, and it puts it into the hopper for storage. And it will take the coal and the gravel and put it into the hopper, and it will take the clay and put it into this electric furnace. And then once it's done, it pumps it up to this chest, and then this thing crafts a brick, and it pumps it into here and stores it. And then this one, just over here, is fed by the macerator, which macerates both the coal and the flint, which is something I didn't do before. Before I had a single macerator and then a rotary macerator. However, I wanted to save energy, so I did it with a hopper. And if you look at my sign on the front, it says, in order, coal, gravel. Now this is because of the limitations of the hopper. There are only really 4 slots unless I stack them. And in order to save energy, what you have to do is you do the coal first, slowly, because there's a lot of it, and then you do the flint quickly, and it makes it really quickly. And then what you're able to do is process all that stuff together to make the coal ball, so each of these, and then output them all at one time to the singularity compressor, so that this thing can build up, a massive amount of pressure and do them really, really quickly, and then put it into a single boring compressor, because it doesn't go as quickly as that thing would need to be another singularity compressor. But so finally, this is my final design. I don't think I can make it any more efficient. The only change I would ever make, again, is if I was making a version of this to overcome any sort of change they make in the game. For example, no longer using bricks, which would suck because you'd have to continue using the obsidian, which is the actual recipe. However, this works perfectly fine, and I'm not complaining at all. I've made about 6 diamonds in my regular world with that design over there, and this will become a much easier method because I need fewer resources, and it will go quicker. Now, major differences between that version and this version is that this version you can put in 3 diamonds worth at a time. So why 3? Well, the hopper only has room for 3 stacks of coal and then 1 of coal, or 1 of gravel, that is. So if you try to do any more than that, it gets screwed up. However, you can overcome that by, instead of piping it that way, you can pipe it upwards into another hopper, and that's just a modification you can make yourself. And then you'll expand your resources. You can go up to, I think, about 7 at that point, 7 at a time. And the more you put in at one time, really, is the more efficient it will be, but I like the way this was. 3 at a time, that's a pick. So I'm going to be putting a world download into the description of this video. that will contain my entire test road. So you'll get my crappy prototype to the almost good prototype to the kind of working to the pretty good and then to the best method available. And you'll have to copy off of that design because this thing is so complex that if you tried to make a video explaining it, you'd probably be really unhappy. Yep. So let's just show off a way of this thing working. So let's just load up my standard set, and I'm going to just put in 2 diamonds worth right now. So I have to order these out, so I have the coal first, then the gravel, then the clay. Really it just matters that you have the coal before the gravel, so you can put this up front or whatever else, but I'm not going to go into that. Now we're going to start off with 7, so we're going to do 2 diamonds worth, so we'll get up to 9. So you flip this source pump, and it pumps out all the materials, so it's an electric pump, so it goes really quickly. And then once it's gone, you flip it up, save energy. Now this thing will start sorting the items, so they'll get split out, and you'll start doing the actual process itself. Now if you look at the order, so you can see that we have the coal, then the gravel. So the order of this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and you want to have the gravel last in order to be efficient in this compressor. Now when we look into here, you can see that the rotary macerator is quickly going through everything else, and then this engine, which is fully heated up, will start pumping it out really quickly. Now if you look at something in here, you'll see that there's something really strange, and you'll see that because I have a piece of cobble in this slot. This is normally the energy slot where you put a battery or something to charge up and power this macerator. However, the hopper cannot perform any logic into how it adds stuff to the macerator, so it'll start loading gravel or coal into this slot, and you don't want that to happen. So just put a piece of cobble in there or something that's not a material that this process needs, so no coal, no gravel, and then this thing will just sit there and won't hurt the design, won't do anything, and then it will process it. So we can already see out of the corner of my eye we have 2 pieces of bricks already. So that was done, and we can go down here into the macerator, and you can see we're almost at 2000 RPM, which is pretty fast. This thing will go up pretty darn high when you're processing 2 stacks of coal at one time. So it's just a waiting game. Just to go through and look at these, this one over here is the brick crafting table. This one is the coal ball crafting table, and then this thing down here is the final coal chunk crafting table. And you can see that there's nothing in here yet. Because the whole process waits on the flint. The flint is the last thing to be processed, and you need it for this recipe. And once again, that's to save energy in later steps. So this thing is now flying at 3000 RPM, and this thing will start, it'll get to a point where the macerator goes faster than the redstone engine at full speed. And that's not a big deal, it's just gonna go through and go as quickly as possible. Now one option that you can take in this thing is to add overclocker modules. So these things just look like a little arrow upwards, and you can, depending on your texture pack, they'll be different. But you can start putting them into these things, and they'll speed up really quickly. You can do all this work much quicker if you have overclocker modules. And I know that some people really like them, so like B00 really loves his overclockers, he'll throw them in there. I don't have the resources in my single player world, so I'll just be leaving it default, and that's not a big issue for me. So now we're still waiting, so we have 2 pieces of coal left, and now this thing, instead of trying to pump it into the that spot, it will just wait until whatever else. I've tested it, you don't need to put anything here or in the overclocker modules. The thing is at least smart enough to know that. And in this design I chose to use a geothermal generator. I prefer that generator over pretty much every other generator. Wall Feed the Beast right now has no way of getting Buildcraft energy into the the EU format, the industrial craft format. So right now that's what I'll be using. Otherwise I'd be using fuel for sure, or peat. Peat is a very stable energy source. But for now I'm just using this because I can just go into the nether and use some tin up and get 8 pieces of these cells, and that'll be, 400,000 EUs just in, one batch of 4 pieces of tin, and this will power it. You don't need to have any sort of MFSUs or MFEs or anything like that. This thing will just do it as much as it needs. Okay, let's just double check this. So we have 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're at 5,000 RPM. So this is going to start loading up that gravel. And now that we have the flint in there, right here you can see the coal balls already starting to go through. And this thing is at max speed, so this thing will really, really quickly. So I'm just going to run through it. And it's done, so that's not going to use any more power. Now it's on to the singularity compressor. Now the singularity compressor is just like all the other advanced modules that are not standard to industrial craft. So what you can have is it just builds up pressure. This one does. The other one, the furnace builds up heat, and the macerator builds up RPMs, of course. So this will start to go. And then the moment that this has enough resources in this chest, which is where it pumps it around to, as you can see, that's when it will start doing the coal chunks. And it doesn't go fast enough in order to use the singularity, as I said before. So far we've built up 10,000, 11,000. It goes pretty quickly once you get up to this point, much, much faster than a regular compressor. I think we've passed the point where we would have a coal chunk in here. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. No, we need one more. Come on. Here we go. Okay. So this one should give us a coal chunk. There it goes. And then finally this thing is just a regular compressor, so it's slow. And we can already see that this thing is just almost to 2,000 PSI. I did not look up the energy ratings on this one, so I'm sorry if you're on a tight budget. I don't know how this is going to do. The other one over there is 28,000. If you could, that puts that into perspective. Oh, there's a diamond. And now we're going to do our lovely step of shoo. And now we have a diamond. Well, that's it. I will put, again, a link to this world in the description, and you can check out my tests of the previous models. You can see my tests over here to see energy usage, which one is better. Just gonna put this out there. Regular macerator 64, 52, 16, and then the worst one overall. You need to cook 4 bricks, measly 1.9K, in the induction furnace. Insane amount of energy to do that. So just be very, very wary if you're trying to do something. It's much more important to look at the differences in your things that you are making. Now let's go double check this chest. 9, we have succeeded, and we've only used about 1 cell of lava, so it's equivalent to my other machine, roughly. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.